now. Thanks everybody for joining us on the Using Spreadsheets in FCS Express 6 webinar. We're very excited to be talking about this new feature. It's really innovative. It's kind of a feature that a lot of people, scientists and researchers alike have kind of asked for over the years. There's the ability to integrate Excel-like functionality directly in FCS Express so we can link back and forth from any spreadsheet-derived values to gated data and any FCS files you have. So again, FCS Express now allows you to use Spreadsheets features, access most of the functionality of Microsoft Excel, like Spreadsheets directly in FCS Express with direct linking to your data, gates, statistics, tokens, and Spreadsheets in FCS Express are going to provide you with all the familiar tools, but while keeping the special needs of a cytometrist in mind. So up on the screen here we have a little agenda of what we're going to try and cover today, what we're going to try and teach you how to use in FCS Express. And the first two items here are kind of about, why would you want to use FCS Express and why would you want to use spreadsheets in there? Well, the reason for using spreadsheets in FCS Express, as you're going to see today, is that you have direct linking of your data and your gates and your plots and your markers and your quadrants, any of the custom tokens you may be using, to the spreadsheet values in FCS Express. So as you move a gate, even if you move it a pixel, that value in the spreadsheet is going to update for you in real time. And how does this kind of help you if you're already using another spreadsheet software? Maybe you're using Excel or Prism, something like that for analyzing your downstream data. Well, the main benefit here, again, is as you move that gate in FCS Express and the spreadsheet updates for you, you have that analysis and that reporting done. If you were using Excel or you were using Prism, whether you were using FCS Express or some other software to analyze your flow data, well, you'd probably have to export that data to Excel, and then if you ever needed to come back and make a change, well, then you'd have to go back to FCS Express, make a change to the gate, go back out to Excel, and kind of move iteratively in that fashion. So really what FCS Express is trying to accomplish with spreadsheets is reduce the kind of amount of steps that you have to do in that workflow. We're trying to make the workflow more efficient, we're trying to make it easier, and we're doing that by putting these tools that work almost exactly like Microsoft Excel directly in the software. So we are going to try and cover a number of different items here. You can see that we're going to talk about creating and accessing spreadsheets and the tools involved, how to populate spreadsheets and format them, using a few different ways of data entry, as well as using spreadsheets with a special tool where we can load data from the data list directly into the spreadsheet rather than having to have a lot of plots open at any one time. We're going to talk about creating formulas, just as you would create formulas and functions and operations in Excel. You can do all that in FCS Express. Of course, you're probably graphing your data in Excel, and that's something we can do in FCS Express with spreadsheets, and again, maintain that live updating of gates and statistics in the spreadsheets that link to your graphs. And then we're going to kind of finish up with a few miscellaneous topics, some of the other things we can do with spreadsheets, as well as how we export spreadsheets and how that kind of file format is retained when we go from FCS Express actually to another software. So if you did want to use Excel, you could have certainly export your data from FCS Express from the spreadsheet you've done there to a spreadsheet in Excel, but you're going to see today there's going to be a lot of things we can do in FCS Express directly that will mitigate the need for additional kind of workflow steps. So let's kind of jump right in here to spreadsheets. What I'm going to do is create a new layout. We're going to show you kind of working with these things from scratch. And what we're going to do in this layout is first insert some data. So I'm going to insert a contour plot for a particular series of data that I have, and we're going to change our parameters and create a gate on this data. Okay, we'll call this the cells gate, and you can see that it's been created and we have a statistic associated with that. Now what we want to do is insert a spreadsheet. If you were using Microsoft PowerPoint for inserting any objects into a page, well of course you'd come into the Insert tab, and in FCS Express the same thing works. If you want to insert any sort of object including a spreadsheet, you'll notice that in the Insert tab in the Spreadsheet category there's an option for New. When we hover over that you'll see the little hint. We can click on the New Spreadsheet button, and you'll notice that you're presented with a dialog to create a new spreadsheet. Now we can change the name of the spreadsheet. Just by default we're calling it New Spreadsheet Number 1, but if we wanted to call this My Analysis, we could call it that. And you notice there's also a little button to open the Data Navigator. But I'm going to click OK, and you can see that a spreadsheet, essentially it looks like a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet is inserted on a page. I can move it around, I can resize it, you can really do anything you want to kind of format the way that this looks on the page. Now you also remember when I clicked to insert a new spreadsheet that it prompted me to view the Data Navigator. If I'd like, I can open up the Data Navigator anytime, and you can see that here is the My Analysis spreadsheet that we created. If I were to insert another spreadsheet, you can see it will appear in the Data Navigator. So just like in Microsoft Excel, when you have different tabs of a spreadsheet, we can have multiple spreadsheets in FCS Express. You can have them on any number of pages, calculating different things, linking back and forth to each other through the use of tokens. So again, creating additional spreadsheets is very akin to creating multiple page tabs in Microsoft Excel. Now, if you don't like a spreadsheet on your page, you can simply select it and delete it. We'll do this here. We'll also delete it from the Data Navigator so we don't confuse ourselves. And you can see we're now just working with that one spreadsheet that we had set up. So once a spreadsheet is inserted, you can click on the spreadsheet, and you'll notice that when we click on the spreadsheet, in the top of the ribbon, you'll notice a new tab pop up that was previously hidden. You can keep your eye on that as I click away and I click back. But the Spreadsheets tab contains two options, or two items, Layouts and Formulas. And what layouts do is when we click on the layout functionality here, or the layout tab, this gives us all of the formatting options for our spreadsheet. Just like you would have formatting options in Excel for formatting things like the text, the fonts, creating borders and tables, changing alignments to the top, the left, and the right. If we were coming in to merge, wrap text. Again, these are all the kind of common things that you use in Excel. They all appear in the same kind of way. We have inserting tokens. We're going to kind of come back to this. This is, of course, something that Excel won't have because it's an FCS Express and Flow Cytometry kind of specific feature. But other things like conditional formatting, sorting, inserting columns, comments, freeze panes, really all the things that you would use in Excel to create even an advanced spreadsheet are all located here. Now, also in the Formulas tab, where you would come in to access any of the kind of formulas that you might want to use to calculate your data. What we'd really like to emphasize is that we have almost all of the formulas that Excel would offer. If we click on the Auto Sum button here, this is kind of a quick tool for quickly calculating averages and counts and mins and maxes for a range of data. All the financial, logical, text, lookup, importantly the math and trigonometry tools. Again, maybe 90% of these might not be useful to you, but we do have 100% essentially of what Excel is offering. So you can have a look through here at some point. You can see what tools are here. We're going to be covering how to use these formulas in just a little bit, but I should bring up, there are a lot of tools, and in Excel you'd probably go to the Excel manual to figure out how some of these items work. In FCS Express you can access the FCS Express 6 manual. We have an entire section here devoted to spreadsheets. And one of the kind of useful tools that we have is that you can see we have a section for spreadsheet formula definitions. If you click on this, it's going to jump to the spreadsheet formula definitions page, and it's going to give you a breakdown of every category that's available within the Spreadsheets Formulas tab. You can see there's a number of different kind of functions, categories, or libraries. And if you click on these, you can see what different operators do. So the manual is going to tell you, of course, a plus sign means add something to something else. But if you wanted to come in because you saw us working with if-then statements and how kind of new and innovative those are in FCS Express, well, you could click on logical functions, and it's going to remind you about how to actually create a logical function in FCS Express with any of your data. So really, any of the resources you need for spreadsheets are here. Of course, we're always here to answer your questions at support@denovosoftware.com, but I would recommend taking a look at this resource and this tool that's been put together for the cytometrists in mind. So what we're going to talk about now is how to populate spreadsheets. We have a spreadsheet on the page and we want to start adding information or data to the spreadsheet for analysis. Well, if you were working in Microsoft Excel, you would probably enter some values into the different cells. I'm simply clicking on the cell and typing in some numbers here as a quick example. And the other thing you might do in Excel is create formula references. In Excel, you would type an equal sign. You would click on one cell to reference, you would enter some sort of mathematical operator, you would click on another cell to reference, and you'd press enter. And now we have a calculation here of cells A1 plus B1. We can then copy that formula down using Control-D or just dragging down the field there just like you would do in Microsoft Excel, and that formula will be copied down in the spreadsheet in FCS Express. So really, I think the take-home about looking at some of this manual data entry is that really the way that you would be working with these cells and things in FCS Express is just like you would be working with them in Microsoft Excel. So there's nothing to be scared about. If you've used Microsoft Excel at some point, you should be pretty comfortable using these features. Now, the other way that we can populate spreadsheets, which is actually probably the more important thing, is that we can grab data directly from your FCS files and from your layouts and from your plots and statistics, really anywhere that you have some sort of information open in FCS Express, we can populate it in the spreadsheet. So there's a few ways of doing that. Of course, anybody who's been using FCS Express for any amount of time probably knows that we really like to drag and drop things because it's really easy. So if we want to populate A1 with a percentage of gated cells here, we can simply drag it and drop it into A1. Now, the most important thing about this is not just a manually entered value. This is the percentage of gated cells from this plot. And as we update this gate, you'll notice in the spreadsheet that the value is updating for us in real time. So this is going to be the really important kind of overarching theme to everything you're going to see today, is that all the functionality that you would have in Excel, you have in FCS Express, except that when you move your gates in FCS Express, those values in the spreadsheet update in real time. Now, that was just dragging and dropping from a static statistic that's in a text box. Of course, there's other ways. If we wanted to grab an entire gate and drop it into the spreadsheet, you can see here at FCS Express knows that we want something from the cells gate. And if we wanted to put in some information, like maybe the X median and the Y median, we can do that. And you can see that they both fall into the spreadsheet now. The X and Y medians, again, updating in real time. Now, additionally, you're not limited to just statistics because, as you know, spreadsheets can handle text information as well. If I just enter text, it will handle that, and there's a number of useful things about having text in spreadsheets. But you may or may not know that your FCS files contain a lot of metadata or information about your experiment, either that you entered at the time of acquisition or that the acquisition instrument had stored. And we can access these by dragging the entire plot into a cell by choosing a keyword token, and you can choose from any of the keywords in your data set. Maybe you wanted to come in here and put in the sample ID, which in this case is, we just called it drug 1. It was some sort of drug treatment for the data file. That value has been inserted. Or maybe again we want to come in and let's put in some statistics for this plot. And here's another place that we can derive information like the file name. We'll drag it in there and you can see that that's been inserted. Now again, besides live updating as we move gates, the other kind of information that we have here is referring to a data file. So as we move data files, as we change data files, you can see that that information is updating in real time in the spreadsheet. So again, if you were kind of entering this information in Excel manually, you're avoiding clerical errors just by kind of doing this in FCS Express. So again, you can see how powerful this is with the real live updating gates and also the live updating tokens and metadata that's being pulled in. But again, the other thing we kind of touched on is formula references, right? So in this case, we have the percentage of gated cells. We have some sort of median value from that gate. And if we wanted to create some sort of derived formula, maybe we wanted to take the median value and divide it by 10. Right? Well, now we have a new token, or not a token, but we have a new spreadsheet cell based on that calculation, or even if we wanted to take, for some reason, the median value and divide it by the percentage of gated cells, we have those calculated values. Now again, what you probably think is as we update this gate, well, even those calculated and derived values are going to be updated in real time. So again, you can see how fast version 6 is for live updating calculations and how well that integrates into this really new innovative feature that we've put into FCS Express. Now we did discuss kind of the layout tab just in passing, but again you can remember that the layout tab in Excel, you can do things like merge cells. So if this file name's a little long for one cell, of course we can come in here and merge that. You can see it's now one cell that's been kind of concatenated with the 3. We can change anything about kind of like borders like we would do in Excel. If we wanted to change anything about our fonts, the colors, the formatting, the boldness, the size, alignment, all of these features have been included. So again, anything you can do with formatting in Excel, we can essentially do within FCS Express. Now the other way that we can access formatting besides just the Format tab is if you right-click on a cell. You notice that we have a general formatting for the spreadsheet as an object, but we also have an option for formatting cells specifically. Just like if you right-clicked in a cell in Microsoft Excel, you would have an option for formatting cells. So when I click on that, you can see this familiar window. You might be used to this from Microsoft products, where you can come in and you can change what kind of assignment that cell should have. So if you are putting in a date range or even a date token, we can know to format that appropriately. You can change the alignment here. Again, a lot of the features that are available within the tab are available here as well. But you can also change things like the border, the fill, and protection, whether that cell is locked or hidden, and doing some kind of familiar Excel features like that. So really, again, the kind of take-home here from what we've seen is that any values can be put into a spreadsheet in FCS Express from any plot, any gate, any place a statistic exists, any keyword token. They will update as data files change. They will update as gates change. The other kind of point to note is that any of the kind of formatting features that you might be using in Excel can be accessed directly here within FCS Express. So, there's a lot of things we can do in this. Now, what we've just shown you is an example. Again, we showed manually entering data and entering data from one data file at a time here. But there's actually a question that came in to the webinar panel here, which is completely relevant to this next section that we're going to cover, is what if you want to do things with many different data files? When I loaded in this data file, we didn't take a look at the data list yet, but there's actually 9 different the data list, and these are all part of the same experiment. So what if you wanted to compare samples? What if you wanted to take an average from multiple different data files? What if you wanted to do a ratio from 2 different parameters, or from the same parameter but from different data files? This is where FCS Express really excels because you can use spreadsheets with data from the data list to populate the spreadsheet. What we're going to do is actually clear out the data from the spreadsheet, and we're going to start a new one here, and I'm just going to unmerge these cells so we can get back to kind of normal here. But let's say we have our 9 samples and we want to compare all of them, and we want to compare the percentage of gated cells simply for this gate, right? What you can do is any data files that are loaded in the data list, you can highlight them, drag them and drop them into the spreadsheet, and choose which statistics you want to display. In this case, we do have to choose some sort of parameter, whether it's relevant or not, but what we want to do is choose the cells gate. We probably want to put in a file name in one column, and then if we hold down and press Control, we can also choose a secondary statistic, like percentage of gated cells. So in this case, I'm going to click OK. What you're going to notice is that the file names for all 9 of our data files have come into the spreadsheet. The percentage of gated cells has been populated based on the position of this gate for every single data file. So what that means, again, is as I update this gating position, our statistics, even though they're not essentially opened in plots in FCS Express as you're kind of used to, they can all update in real time as that gate changes. Now there's other things we can do here. I just inserted one statistic for percentage of gated cells, but maybe we want to put in some additional statistics. So at any time you can just drag these files back in. You can add additional statistics. Let's look at the CD3 median for the cells gate. We'll get that information that's in there. Maybe if we open up another plot for this data and we start looking at something like CD4 versus CD8, let's create a few gates on here. We'll call this gate CD4, and we'll create another gate here on this other population and call this CD8. What we can do now is, now that we have those gates created, we can simply drag this in. And let's look at the CD4 number of events, and then we can drag this in, and we could say, let's look at the CD8 number of events. So you can see how quickly and easily we can actually populate any of the statistics from any of the plots across all the data files just through drag and drop. And again, we have a lot going on now, but as we adjust this gate, they'll update for us in real time. Now, the next kind of thing that comes up with this is how do we use formulas and formulae to help analyze this data? Because this is probably what you're going to be doing in Excel. You'd be taking data like this, but you'd be doing some sort of average or median or finding the min or max of a data set to show you kind of what has responded. And we can do that by using the Formulas tab. If you were using Excel and you wanted to do a formula for a kind of quick and dirty formula, you could grab a range of cells and you could say, let's use our auto sum features here. So if I wanted to take an average of the median CD3 there, I could choose average, and you can see that an average for those values will appear. Or if I wanted to come in and put in the max of the range there, you can see that, maybe the sum of these things. It's very quick and easy to use these. You simply grab the range that you want to look at, and you can use the auto sum feature. Now this works just like Excel as well. I mean, the other way a lot of people are probably familiar with working in Excel is you type in an equal sign and you say average, and you actually grab a range of cells and then you close the brackets. You can see that average is calculated as well, just by typing in that formula. But again, as we update the gate across all the samples, these values update for us in real time. Now we can also do any sort of formulae function for cells as well. So we'll just show you an example here. If we wanted to take the square root of a particular value, well, we'd probably come into Math and Trigonometry. We'd scroll down here because there is quite a long list of the different things that we can do in FCS Express. But if we choose square root, and then we say let's take the square root of the number of events and press enter. You can see that square root is calculated. Again, we'll just copy this down. So the square root is being calculated for the number of events for all of these. And again, as we up this gate, that function is now being updated in real time. So again, if this was the type of thing where you'd be taking this data out to Excel and then you decided you need to change the gating position, well, we have that all done in real time. Now, another kind of functionality that a lot of people use both in FCS Express and Excel essentially is if-then statements, because what if we wanted to do a quick calculation based on a threshold and say if a value is high or low, maybe our percentage of gated cells, right? You can see here that we have a few where the percentages are quite low. So I'm just going to type in high and low, and what we're going to do is put in a logical function. We're going to say if. Now the criteria for this is we're going to say we want to evaluate this particular cell, and we want to say if that value is higher than 40. We now need to put in some operators here. We're going to put in a comma and say high, and if we put in another comma and a quotation there, that's going to indicate if it's not high, then it's low. So press enter. And you can see we have evaluated that function. Again, we'll copy this down, and you can see that we found one value here that's less than that particular range threshold that we set in the if-then statement. Now again, the really cool thing here is if we change this gate, you can see that all of our high-low if-then statements are being taken into account. So just like that, we can find a responder in our kind of complex series of data. We can really get any of that kind of information we want with these things. So, and again, the other thing I showed you here is if you just wanted to type in a formula, if you know the name of the kind of function or the operator that you've been using in Excel, here we entered an average, you can do that. But again, you could always kind of look through the list here, or you can look through the function library in our manual, or even search that to see how we actually use those functions. So what we're going to do now is actually kind of look at a real-world example of this. Actually, I'm going to type in one more kind of formula here to answer somebody's question. But if you wanted to compare a ratio of one sample to another, I mean, let's look at the number of events from sample 5 and divide that by the number of events for sample 6. And you can see here that we have that calculated very quickly. So again, these things are very kind of easy to do, just as easy as they would be to do in Excel. Now, kind of real-world example of using spreadsheets. I mean, this is pretty real-world, comparing a lot of different things. But here's an example of actually calculating some information from a series of different data files. And really, what we're interested in doing with this spreadsheet we've inserted is calculating the stain index for 4 different files on which we've performed an antibody titration. So we want to get kind of multiple pieces of information from this data set. We want to know which data file, what the stain index is for a particular data file. And then we want to know when does that stain index kind of max out or peter off as we're titrating down an antibody, right? So, we do have the option to calculate in custom tokens in FCS Express the stain index, but, it becomes a little bit easier when you're using spreadsheets, especially if you kind of want to graph this data afterwards. You can kind of skip the custom token step. And what we do here is we're just going to type in a column name for stain index. And to calculate the stain index, we're going to put in the formula. And you can see we have it written down here just for quick reference. We've already populated some fields here for you, so we don't have to go through dragging and dropping live on the webinar. But what we're going to do is say take the MFI of the positive, subtract it from the MFI of the negative, and then we're going to divide that by the standard deviation. But we have to multiply that by 2. So we're going to put in an operator for multiplication, and now we have the stain index for dilution 15 microliters per test. And again, if you remember, we'll just copy this information down the list, and now we have stain index values for an 8-point titration. I mean, it was really that simple. As we adjust the gate, we can see how these state index values are changing. So if we move to a kind of slightly different gate for the population, we can see what kind of impact that has across the entire range of data sets. Now, what you would do with this kind of information, typically in Excel, is you would chart it, because you want to get some regression information to figure out what's going on with this data. So I'm going to show you here. I'm going to actually format this spreadsheet real quick. I did a right click, and we're actually going to format the object. And what I'm going to tell FCS Express is that if I chart this data, I want to use the values in the first rows as labels for that chart. So I'm just going to check that. And then I can come in here to my Insert tab, and I can insert a scatter with regression plot. We're going to talk more about these chart types in just a moment. But you can see here I've plotted, and I have access to all the parameters that are included in that spreadsheet. So if I want to look at stain index versus dilution, I can do that. And I can even come in and change the regression fit for something that's a little bit more appropriate for antibody titrations, which is the Michaelis-Menten fit. And you can see here that as our stain index increases and as our dilution is diluted out, that we have a kind of plateau here. And that plateau is going to tell us where adding or removing additional antibody is not going to provide additional benefit towards the stain index of the experiment. So this can be used for a lot of things. Again, here we're looking at a stain index. This is going to help you cut down how much antibody you actually have to use in the experiment. But again, the really important note here is that if I adjust this gate, that's going to change the data values within our spreadsheet. It's going to change our calculated stain index, and it's also going to update this regression analysis in real time. So, this is really great, because if you need to say, all right, well, we have a kind of two populations here. Well, how does the stain index change if I'm just using one population versus the other? Again, you can kind of drill down to anything you want really quickly and easily, whereas if you were just doing this in Excel, if somebody said they wanted to look at that second population, you'd have to kind of recalculate the entire analysis again. Here in FCS Express, we just move the gate. So again, I did want to reiterate, now that we're kind of looking at formulas in the software, that these behave just like Microsoft Excel. They're inserted just like Microsoft Excel. They update in real time. And very importantly, if you kind of saw we're working with custom value if-then statements, you remember that, oh, that looked really cool in the webinar, but I can't remember how to create that logical function. Well, you can just go to the website, go to the Spreadsheets formula definition section here, and you'll get a breakdown of what that actually looks like. So that way you'll be able to come in and say, all right, here's the parameters I need, the operators I need, how to actually create that function and put these into action in your own lab. Now, we also have a number of options for graphing. That's something you saw when we just kind of looked at the scatter with regression plots and the stain index layout. But again, if you want to use a graph, I would always suggest you kind of come in here and format this, especially if you have descriptive column headers in there that you've entered, to use the values in the first row as a label. And then you can come into the Insert tab, and you can choose any of our kind of specialized graphs, like bar plots, pie charts, these scatter with regression, and even scatter plots. If you wanted to plot the data without putting a trend line in there, you could do that. We'll show you inserting a bar plot. So I simply selected the spreadsheet, I checked the bar chart here, and I'm going to draw an object on the page for that bar chart. And you can see here we're plotting the file name against the percentage of gated events. Well, if I wanted to change that, I can change to any of the different columns that I have present in the spreadsheet. If I wanted to, I could insert multiple bar charts for these things. So if I wanted to look at percentage of gated cells in one, and look at something different in the other, better yet, I'll just do a copy and paste of this chart here. So here we have percentage of gated cells versus median, and you can see here as I change the sample that these things will update for us. And again, pie charts work in the same way. We just simply draw a pie chart on the page after we've selected the data grid, or after we selected the spreadsheet and the layout, and you can see that this will all update for us in real time. So again, these are kind of very useful tools. These, working with charts and working with graphs in the software, it's very quick and easy. If you need error bars, you need to do t-tests, you need to do any kind of that kind of functionality, there are options in here to actually use those and create error bars based on different parameters in here, just like you would do in Excel. But again, we're going to be putting on entire webinars dedicated to graphing. It's kind of its own feature in and of itself. But we hope you'll join us for those webinars and see some of our resources for working with graphs. But we are going to kind of focus on the data entry and using spreadsheets today. Now, another kind of situation might come up where you have a spreadsheet inserted in your analysis, and you have a certain gating position, and this gating position is being applied for all of the open data files that you have here in the data list. But as you can see here, we have this is like iteration number 4, our if-then statement found that it was low and the value is 36. Well, what we probably want to do is jump there and see what's going on, right? So we're going to use the next button, and we're going to get to that data file where the percentage was 36, right? So in this case, we probably need a change to the gate. I mean, something happened with this data file. This gate is probably not appropriate, but this is where our data-specific gates feature that has been introduced in version 6 comes into play as well. Again, there'll be a whole nother webinar about using gates in FCS Express. In fact, we have it recorded and it's on our website. But what you can do here is you can say, come to the gating tab, say make a data-specific gate. And what this will do is break that gate out of the master gating position. So you can see here that all of the other files stay the same except for this particular value here, because we're simply adjusting the gate position based on this data file. Even the bar chart, you can see that one bar kind of going up and down. And if we needed to kind of continue to review data files here, we can just use next and previous. If there was another data file where we needed a data-specific gate, of course we can do that. It will just update that one data file. And if we came into our next data file that uses the master gating position, you can see here that this will update all of the gates except for the 2 data-specific gates. You notice here, let me just actually use our spreadsheet formatting here. You can see that these values are staying constant. I should say that not this value here, we'll put this back to the default, but this value here are remaining constant because they're based off of data-specific gates, not the master gating position. So again, spreadsheets, you can integrate different gating positions between samples. You can have all the samples open at the same time. You can have one at a time. I mean, we've tried to account for really every possible variation that you could encounter or way that you may want to work with data in FCS Express. Now, there's some other uses of spreadsheets in FCS Express. You notice here that there's a number of formatting options. There's a lot of things in here, and you may or may not have ever used conditional formatting in Excel, but it's a really great tool, especially when you're working with biological data, flow cytometry and image cytometry data, when a lot of times you're just looking for changes, right? In this data set, we have a few data files that are kind of similar, and then we have a few that are outliers. Well, conditional formatting is a tool where you can select a range of data, and you can apply different visualizations for finding out what's going on with that data within the cell itself. So if I wanted to choose an icon set that tells me if that value has remained unchanged, has gone up or gone down based on a percentile, I can put that in there. And you can see how we have some really cool arrows that appear here that are going to tell us which values are kind of changed, unchanged, or high or low. Again, if we wanted to come in and put in maybe a color scale, so we're looking for almost like a heat map of this data, we can pop that in there. If we wanted to put in, again, data bars. These are kind of useful as well. We can get some information about what's going on with those data sets. Now the conditional formatting also, again, I can't reiterate enough how awesome it is to have the ability for this live updating, gating, and linking, right? You can see that these values for the conditional formatting are updating for us in real time as well. And you may want to manage some of these rules for the conditional formatting. For this particular instance, we can see that maybe we want to look at things that are below 65% and call them that they're actually low instead of being constant. Well, you can come into conditional formatting, you can choose Manage Rules, and you can see here that these are the rules for that icon set. And if I want to edit it away from the kind of default rule where we say anything that's above 67 is high and anything that's below 33 is low, we can change this. Maybe we'll make this 62 and we'll make this 70 instead, and anything below it is going to be red. And when we do that and we apply it, you can see that our rule changed. We have a different kind of criteria for what we're defining as high, low, in the middle, or unchanged. And again, those change. So there's a lot of kind of really unique functionality, even powerful things that Excel has that you may or may not know about that are just really quick and easy to apply in FCS Express. It's going to help you better understand really complex data sets at a glance. Now, some of the other features that we include in FCS Express with these spreadsheets is that you can take any value from the spreadsheet and bring that somewhere else, right? So here we're kind of bringing data values into the spreadsheet, but maybe you had gone in here and you had done an auto sum. You've done an average of your medians, and you've summed up your number of events for some reason, and then you're looking for the minimum for this particular data set, so you can kind of see what's going on with that. Well, any other place in FCS Express that you have a text box or it can kind of receive a value or a token value, you can actually just copy and paste. If you want to Control-C and paste into this box, you'll see that that spreadsheet cell value will appear. So I can do that again. I'll just do a copy and paste to put that value in. And now as you update that gate, that value that's being updated in the spreadsheet is also being calculated and shown as a token somewhere else in the layout. Now again, I showed a copy and paste here. You can do a drag and drop. You can do a right click and insert token. And if you choose insert token, you can see that this falls under the spreadsheet cell value section. And if we click insert, you're just going to be prompted to choose the spreadsheet you want to use because you might have a few of them in the layout. You're going to choose the cell address. In this case, let's put in D11 because I think that was the sum of our number of events. And you can see that that value is going to appear. Again, you can put these anywhere you want. You can copy and paste your text boxes to kind of duplicate these token values. It doesn't really matter. Now this also kind of falls into batch processing as well, right? I mean, if you're doing some sort of report, even if it's just a one-page report and you're doing a batch action to save everything from this report to PowerPoint and PDF, and maybe you just want a few of the consolidated statistics going out to Excel, what we can do is say, let's save this as an Excel document on our desktop here. And the information that we want to put out to Excel is this condensed spreadsheet information, right? We're going to drag that and drop it. You can see that it's actually going to put into my new Excel spreadsheet. Maybe this is kind of your database or where you're keeping track of experimental data over time, that information. And we'll also include an export to PowerPoint so you can see how this looks as well. We'll put this again on my desktop and click OK. Now what will happen is when I run this batch process, you can see that we're going to PowerPoint, we're going to open up Excel. You can see that in Excel here we have the spreadsheet value that was defined. Again, this is the summary of all of our medians and summary of all of our events. So this is kind of better off being used in a database somewhere. But also in your PowerPoint report, you're going to have that spreadsheet view in here. Of course, this is just a picture. It's not really a spreadsheet at this point anymore, but this will kind of help you further condense and make that workflow more efficient, because you're not going to be having to go kind of back and forth between different softwares to see what those values were for that day in the experiment. Now, one of the last things I did want to touch on in this section was some of the other things we can do here. I did mention briefly that custom tokens exist in FCS Express. In the past, this is kind of where we handled many of these custom calculations. To no way in the kind of complexity and ease of use which we're doing in spreadsheets now. But I did want to mention that if you have any sort of custom values, custom tokens, you did some sort of mathematical operator, maybe you brought this in from version 4, version 5, or it's something you want to integrate into a spreadsheet, well, you can just drag and drop. That custom token value will appear in the spreadsheet, and as you adjust that custom token, of course it will update in the spreadsheet. Now this goes the other way as well. If you wanted to say, let's have a new custom token, and that value, for whatever reason, is going to be some value times a spreadsheet cell, well, we can just insert a token. We're going to use a spreadsheet cell value. We're going to grab the cell address for B11, which was the minimum value for that range, and we're also going to make this a numeric type. So when we go back and we put this custom token somewhere else on our report, you can see that that value is going to be based off of a spreadsheet range, and if we were to change this value or remove it, since this was the minimum, there'll be a new minimum that's defined, and our custom token value will update. So again, keep in mind, we can move from spreadsheets to reports, from spreadsheets to custom tokens, from custom tokens to spreadsheets. Really, any way you slice it in FCS Express, however you're doing your analysis, you can always link back and forth to spreadsheets to kind of use them the way that you want and the way that you need. Now, I'm going to undo that change. You can see undo works with spreadsheets as well as redo. So that way we can actually get our report back here into a way that I want to look at for the next and final section of this webinar, which is exporting to Excel. We showed batch exporting to Excel. We showed that as part of the batch process. And batch process can be defined in a number of different ways. But really, if you wanted to take this spreadsheet as it exists now and you wanted to bring that out to Excel for one reason or another, there's a very quick and easy way to do that. We simply click on the Layout tab, and you can see there's an export option. If you're using some other software now, you might be doing a lot of copy and paste. We hate copy and paste at Novo software. We try and make things easy and functional through a user interface here. So you could actually grab this whole thing, and instead of copying and pasting into something like Excel, we can choose export. And export is going to prompt you to save that Excel file somewhere. So what I'm going to do is choose a location here on my desktop to export to Excel, and this is actually just appearing on another screen here, but we'll type in test on our desktop, and what's going to happen is this spreadsheet is going to be exported as an Excel spreadsheet at this point. So I'm going to launch Excel, and what you're going to see here in Excel is it isn't just a simple CSV file that's been put out. We have, of course, all the text, but we have our conditional font formatting, right? If we were to change something about this range, you can see that that's actually going to update our conditional values that are in here. We're also maintaining any of our custom calculations that we did in FCS Express. So we have our square root function here that's actually being performed. It's not a static value that was exported. So if something were to change about this median value, it's of course going to change that the number of events value. It's going to change that square root value, as well as any of our if-then statements. If you had formula references, equals A1 plus B2, those values are going to be maintained in Excel. So again, we really think there's a lot of benefits of working with these directly in FCS Express. You know, there won't be a ton of need to go out to Excel, but we do understand that sometimes your final product has to be an Excel database or a CSV file, something like that. We can certainly accommodate it through the export feature. So with that, I'd just like to put together a little summary of a lot of the items we talked about today. Essentially, spreadsheets are going to allow you to quickly perform many of the calculations that you would do that would be classically derived downstream in something like Excel or Prism, but we're going to give you direct linking to your data sets and your analysis in FCS Express in real time. Spreadsheets in FCS Express also look and behave much like Excel with the added benefit of direct linking to the data. So again, we're having everything that you can do in Excel with real updating gating. Now, the data may also be easily graphed in FCS Express, as you saw, just by creating spreadsheets. We can insert scatter with regression plots. We can insert pie charts. We can insert bar charts, scatter plots, really any of the things that you want to do. And they can be easily added and used for any data analysis workflow, including batch processing. As you saw, any way you slice it in FCS Express, spreadsheets can be integrated back and forth between tokens and custom tokens and batch processing and graphing and reports, so it's all there if you need. Now, of course, if you have any questions, you can contact us at support@denovosoftware.com. You can visit us at denovosoftware.com or fcsexpress.com. There you'll be able to get a free 30-day demo of FCS Express. You can try out all this functionality yourself. If you didn't realize, FCS Express 6 with the spreadsheets functionality, it's compatible with all version 4 and version 5 layouts. So if you have any candidates for analysis where you want to bring your version 4 and version 5 into 6 so you can start working with spreadsheets, that can be accomplished. And if you're still working version 3, that's fine. We can help you get on version 6. You just need to write us so we can give you some special instructions for that. And again, you can contact us at support@denovosoftware.com.